Andy, a lot of people will know you from all sorts of different motorsports. Your career has been wide and successful. Just tell, for people who don't know about you, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Sort of driven lots of different things, prototypes, GTs for Aston Martin and for Delta. I even drove the crazy Delta Wing in IMSA in the States for a few years, which, you either loved it or hated it. And so alongside my racing career, I'm very, very lucky that I get to work with the absolute best of British talent. So, which I very much enjoy. Keeps me young in many ways, keeps me sharp in others. So, absolutely, love the opportunity that I get to race in my own career, but also working with different drivers.
Because as you say, you are a driver still, but also you have this responsibility within the BRDC, which is the British Racing Drivers Club. Anyone who knows Silverstone will know about it, of kind of moulding and shaping the careers of some of the young drivers who are BRDC SuperStars. So just tell me a little bit about that programme. What is it? Why is it?
Well, BRDC SuperStars is there for the elite drivers within the BRDC, the young next generation of young British talent, and it's really important, I think, for the BRDC to really help these drivers. I think we've got a responsibility as a club. I mean, I was very lucky that when I was in my formative years of my career, I was on the SuperStars program, and the program is there. It was brought around by Damon Hill to look at how it can nurture and make that really final transition step for a driver at a really tricky stage of their career, from being an aspiring young racing driver to being a professional. Now, whether that be in touring cars, that be in single seaters, or that be in prototypes and GTs for someone like myself, it's pooling the resource of the club, and we've got so much knowledge and so much experience within the club, and making sure that we help the drivers at that critical stage to develop them on track and off track, but also create opportunities for them to make sure they have a career in the sport.
Finding your way in any industry is difficult, but in such a competitive field as motorsport, I can imagine between the drivers it is competitive. A lot of them fighting for the same seat, the same sponsorship deals. So how do you go about picking a group of people that are actually going to help each other and be helped?
You know what? It's actually probably in this sort of period which we're doing at the moment of looking at sitting down and looking at what drivers we're going to have for the upcoming year on the SuperStars program. It's kind of the best and the worst bit of the year as well, because obviously you get to analyze how the current drivers are doing, what new drivers are coming in through the ranks who aren't necessarily a superstar, who might well become one, but also there's some drivers that naturally will not continue with the program. Fortunately, this year most of the drivers will continue, and the ones that won't will graduate, because they've essentially they've achieved their goals in terms of what the SuperStars program is there for, in terms of they are fully fledged professional racing drivers. But we sit down, we've got a huge wealth of knowledge. Myself, Derek Warwick, and Ian Titchmarsh will go through alongside other scouts that we rely on within the club, and look at who are the drivers that we want to be working with. And it's a very difficult process. To pick 12, that's probably one of the hardest things, because we have so much talent. You could end up probably having 15, 16, 17 guys on easily. So it's important to get it right and make sure that we can add value to those drivers moving forward.
Now, when it comes to the BRDC, one of the most influential people and important people, I suppose, at the moment is David Coulthard. How does he fit into the BRDC?
So obviously he's the president, and I mean I was over the moon when DC got to be selected as the current president. I mean, I think it's very important for a club to have a strong leadership, and also have somebody who is very current. You make that in reference to myself with the SuperStars, and I think it's the same with the presidency. I think having somebody like DC steering the ship, is more than, you know, more than the value that it creates. And I think that he's obviously been there, done it, and done everything within the sport. And yeah, it's worth it just for his speech at the end of the year annual awards. It's always entertaining anyway. So no, he's a top bloke. And I think on a serious matter, for the young up and coming drivers, to have somebody like DC there who's accessible, he always makes himself accessible to the drivers, and make sure that they can pick up the phone, speak to him, pick his sort of brains. That's invaluable, isn't it, to any driver?
We are talking about the Superstars, and it's a program, I suppose, for people who don't know, it's a little bit X Factor-ish, isn't it, Andy?
Yes, we don't quite have the same recruitment process, but my Simon Cowell pants aren't quite that high yet. But no, it's yeah. I mean, it's certainly some of the styles of the drivers when they come in and before they collect their Superstars kit for the year. You could definitely they should be on a stage, that's for sure. Yeah, no, we've got some some super talent on the program, and to us, year on year it just keeps getting stronger and stronger, and that is no joke. The level of these drivers. You look at, I think back to when I was doing Formula 3 or I was doing Formula Ford, and that there wasn't that level of coaching or development around a driver, and in all seriousness, that level does just get higher and higher every year, because they've all got these top level coaches, whether that be a mind coach, whether that be a trainer. Obviously simulators are a massive factor now in drivers development, which I just didn't have it when I was, should we say, growing up, and not that I have grown up far from it, but in terms of that, at that stage of a driver's sort of early career now, there's so much raw resources that they can rely on, and it's just making the level get higher and higher and higher, to be honest.
Well, let's introduce everybody at home to Jake Hill. He's a British touring car driver. And let's find out about, last year was a weird year, wasn't it, Andy, with COVID, and 2020 felt like at some points it didn't really get started. But let's have a listen to Jake and how his year went. So Andy, Jake talks there about the friendship that he has with you, and I'm sure you'll be a little embarrassed by the kind words that he said about you, but actually you are there to help these guys, to help these superstars be the very best they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that's really, really important for the drivers to know that they've got somebody that is going to have their back, and is going to make sure that that there's going to give them advice with the best intentions. Now, Jake's a really interesting case, because touring cars, I've never been in that environment. I've never driven a touring car. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know the first thing about it, but that doesn't mean that you can't contribute towards him as a professional racing driver. And I think you can always find common factors where you can discuss and add value to someone like Jake. And part of that is just building up the trust and working with them. As a coach in this environment, you need to create an environment where they feel that they can speak to you, and that's really, really important. And with all the drivers, that's one thing I try to get across from the moment they come on to Superstars.
And being recognized by the BRDC, by your fellow drivers, it does have a big part to play in your progression.
Massively. Our entry level program is the Rising Stars, and then you get the next level, which is for the more elite drivers, is the Superstars, and both carry such a weight. It's a badge of honor. Obviously, as a member, you get to carry the badge, but obviously the Superstars badge is ever so slightly different, and they, all of our drivers carry it. You can see it's all plastered over social media. It's on their helmets, it's on the race cars, it's on the race suits, and it really does stamp your authority to everybody who's watching. Whether they're their rivals, or they're older generations who are looking at that next year bit of talent coming through. If you are a superstar, you really are on your way to achieving great things. And looking back through the list of drivers that we've had through the Superstars program, it's truly a who's who of British motorsport, and it's really amazing to think that the club have contributed for over such a long period of time into helping these drivers go on to achieve their goals.
We will talk alumni in a few moments. You did that perfectly. The segue was beautiful, Andy, because we'll talk a little bit about Lando Norris and George Russell. Russell clearly had a great year in 2020, but another man who is a superstar and also had a really good year last year, despite and in spite of COVID, is Phil Hanson. Let's catch up with him. So Andy, for Phil and for the guys who were superstars in 2020 because of COVID, they missed out on a lot, but the camaraderie, as Phil was speaking about then, I think they really missed the opportunity to be able to be superstars properly. It must have been tough for everybody involved.
Yeah, absolutely. It was obviously there's no doubt about it that 2020 was a difficult year for everybody involved in motorsport. And from the superstars perspective, it was so frustrating. We started the year in March. In fact, Phil and I, we drove for the same team at United Autosport, and we'd just come back from Barcelona testing. We went straight to Silverstone. We did the launch day, the media launch day for Superstars, where all the drivers got their kit, they got the photographs, and they actually did some hot laps with journalists. And it was a fantastic day, and then we had so much good material planned for the year, and then obviously COVID really kicked in, and it just obviously shattered everybody's plans. So we couldn't have, a big part of the Superstars program is having group activities. We do the bespoke one-to-one learning with drivers that we coach and develop them, but it's really important. And you touched upon it earlier in terms of they benefit from one another, and that cross-developmental learning is so important for drivers, because these are guys that are all elite, but they can work with one another. And even for guys from different disciplines, and they can benefit from one another if you create an environment of openness where they're willing to share. Because normally as racing drivers, if we've got a small advantage, we want to protect it. We want to go run and hide in the corner and make sure nobody's got it. But if you can create that environment where drivers, like on Superstars, where they're willing to, work with one another and drag one another along, it just, again, the level gets higher and higher. So it's definitely one element that we missed out on the program with obviously lockdowns, and probably the early part of 2021 is going to be similar, but I can't wait to get going with a bang as soon as we can.
Now, we did try and get George Russell and Lando Norris to come onto this show, but they're both busy doing their pre-season prep. But those guys are fundamental to British motorsport now, and they were part of the Superstars. How pleasing is it to see someone like George going into a Mercedes at the end of last year, and those guys are achieving for you?
Just incredible. I think Lando and George are just two of the most recent graduates who have gone into Formula One and done a stunning job. And I think obviously Lando's in the McLaren and always seems to outdrive the car, but George's performance, everybody will remember that. I mean, I think it got people talking outside of motorsport, didn't it? Who is this kid who's just got in a Formula One car, Lewis Hamilton's car, and led a race? It was kind of like, wow. And it does show how much talent there is on that Formula One grid. And there's nobody, I think, that anybody would have like to have seen succeeding more than than George. He's an absolute proper gentleman, both on and off track, but super talented. And to be honest with you, it doesn't, to the people who have worked with him, it doesn't shock you he did that good a job. He is that talented. So yeah, just can't wait to see what they'll do with this season. Now,
as part of the Superstars program, I'm fascinated to know what you can do to help a driver, someone like Dan Ticktum. So we're going to speak to Dan in just a minute. And Dan is someone who's been through the roller coaster, been through the washing machine of motorsport, and at a young age of 21, it almost feels like he needs to have a little deep breath and start again and change his attitude. So is that something you work on with drivers in kind of managing the psychological side of the sport?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's important to when you bring in, if you look from a sports psychologist as something that a lot of drivers are using, I think it's really important in my role that I'm not a qualified sports psychologist, so nor am I a qualified fitness coach. So I won't do the individual coaching with that driver. However, what you can do is bring in experts, qualified experts from outside or within the BRDC to work with those drivers. But I think the role of myself here is to recognize, okay, what strengths and weaknesses do the drivers have, and how can we bring in the necessary people to add value to those drivers? And someone like a Dan, you know, he's so naturally talented. It's just beyond belief. You look at what he's done at Macau. Any car he gets in, he's always going to be quick. But he clearly has areas of his career and his driving personality, should we say, both on and off track, that needs development. You know, he's not the finished article, and that's where we've got to add value and to you know, to make sure that we're moving forward. Dan's always going to ruffle feathers. You know, you could say he's a bit of Marmite. He's outspoken. He's got things to learn, but you know, super talented guy, and will hopefully go a long way in this sport.
We do live in a very PR-led world in motorsports. And is that a balance that, you know, you have to strike, even for yourself, Andy, when you want to say something, but you know you have to hold back?
I think that's just life, isn't it? But yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, it's certainly in sport, especially motorsport, which is a sport that relies so much on, you know, the input and commercial partners and sponsorships and big automotive brands. You know, any driver needs to recognise that the to a degree, you always have to be on message. That doesn't mean, and you see this with a lot of drivers, and you've seen this since the sort of Kimi effect, that a lot of drivers look at a Kimi Räikkönen and think, oh well, I can be like that, and but that doesn't mean that you need to be overly controversial. That doesn't mean that you need to be overly difficult, but that doesn't stop you from having a personality. So I think it's a fine balance. You know, you look at someone like a Lewis, as he's got more established, you know, his personality has grown and developed and changed over a bit of time. So you are allowed to be who you want, and I think that should be actively encouraged. The last thing you want, you know, sportsmen as a whole, you know, that you're seen almost as gladiatorial. People want to look at you, want to hear what you've got to say. So you've got a voice. So the worst thing you can do is be vanilla. But at the same time, you also have to be, you know, respectful to the team and the people that you represent and the people that you're speaking to. And I think as long as you conduct yourself in that manner, you know, you'll always get people who want to listen to you.
The BRDC, just walking through the clubhouse doors, knowing that you're a member of that very special club, it's something that never leaves you as a driver. Completely.
And I think, you know, you'll always see the drivers, whether they be superstars or they be full members, will always wear that badge, you know, that badge with pride and with honor. And you know, that's something that I think it's every driver remembers the day in their career if they were asked to be a rising star or they asked to be a superstar, and certainly when you get that full membership. And I remember that for me it was an incredibly proud moment. And obviously for myself to have been a superstar and then to more recently being asked to be a director of the SuperStars was an incredibly proud moment. And you know, I think when you as you say, when you're in that clubhouse, sometimes you have to, you know, you pinch yourself and just remember how far you've come, because it's an incredible club to be a part of, an incredible membership that you've got the opportunity to learn from and have access to. And I really mean that with some of the older members as well. And I actually really think that I remember years ago I was at one of the BRDC lunches and I was sat next to Howden Ganley, and it was just like, wow, you know, what a chap. And if I'm honest, when I sat down with him, I had no clue who he was, and there was an award on the table, and it was, he said, oh, I was leading the previous winners and his name was it. And I said, well, you know, what had you done that year to win the award? And I think he said, like, you know, maybe won a Formula One race and Le Mans in the same year. It was like, wow, like, you know, it was just an amazing chap, and to be a contemporary or to be alongside people like that is just incredible. And I think it should never be forgotten.
Yeah, Alex in his interview there said that he regretted not making more of the opportunity, not actually being cheekier and really knocking on doors. And is that something you would say not just to the superstars, but to people who want to be drivers, to people who want to be where you are now, that you have to make your own success.
100%. You know, you get given, I don't see this with a lot of the current superstars. I see it with quite a lot of drivers who are not superstars, that they always say, well, I never get asked to be these things. I never, why us? We always get overlooked. And then you just turn around, flip the coin over and say, yeah, but what have you done to make it happen? And, you know, I think that's so important for any young driver. And I think that's true in any career, you know, whether it's a sporting career or not. Then, to be perfectly honest with you, you know, if you really want something, you've got to go out there and get it and make yourself, you know, you don't need to make yourself a nuisance, but make people aware of you. And you know, I for sure, when I was on the program, you know, Tim Harvey was running it at the time, and I just, you know, made sure that I was, you know, wasn't a nuisance to him, but I was there just in, you know, making sure that he was subtly aware. And I think, you know, that's really, really important, and that speaks volumes about you as a professional. You know, people rely too much on their speed in the car, you know, and that's the prerequisite. That's what gets you invited to the party, but it doesn't mean you're going to have a good time. You know, you've got to go and do that for yourself.
Andy, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you and all of our guests today about the BRDC, about the amazing program that is SuperStars. And we only hope that in the future, lots more drivers get the chance to kind of come under your directorship and learn their trade.
Thank you very much. No, we hope so. And yeah, just love working with the up and coming talent. So yeah, it's always exciting.
Subscribe to the Silverstone Podcast now.